Nanda Chintaluri, she's Vice President Research and Analytics with RRD Global Outsourcing Solutions, APAC. Then we have Debaprasad Chakrabarti, he's AVP Portfolio Head from Infosys BPM. Venkatraman Umakant, VP and SBU Head Analytics and IT from V Technologies. Nandagopal V, AVP Head of Global Customer Experience with Wald. We have Mr. Ashish Bhatia, he's Global Solution Center Head India with DXC Technology. And our panel moderator for the day, Mr. Vikas Anand from Botminds. Could we have a round of applause for them, please? Thank you.
Everyone for coming down here for this panel. I'll just take a seat in a minute. We are talking about BPM trends for 2022. I've got a couple of notes that I want to ask questions around. So far we've seen...
Yeah, struggling to hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
It's better.
All right.
Now it's better.
All right, so the topic really is on BPM trends that dominate 2022. That's the topic of our panel today. So far we've seen automation is essentially done, with RPA as the main trend. And I believe there are two kind of companies, one who have tried and done the automation, the other ones who have not done the automation. There is no other way. Of course, the ones who have done, there is a very small percentage of companies that actually succeed. 20-30% essentially succeed. And we've seen tremendous use cases over here in terms of handling those situations as well. But automation in last couple of years has expanded beyond RPA. So earlier automation was very synonymous to just RPA, but now it has gone beyond that. So I want to start with Mr. Ajay. You have a ITES experience, with 2 decades. What's your take on the RPA and bots specifically within the ITES world? We'll start with that.
Thank you, Vikas. I'm sure everybody will have an opinion on this buzzword which is happening right now on the RPA side. But my take would be as follows. We haven't still seen the best of RPA. I think in another 5 to 6 years, when RPA and AI is merged, that time we will see solutions which would be out of the world, frankly. Right now, everybody started with only logical side of processing, and when they started doing it, they realized that that is not enough. Whatever is logical, it can be done. But now they wanted some intuition inside it. Now they want some intelligence inside it. And that, I think, is happening as we speak. It will surely take, in my opinion, around 4 years to mature to an extent where confidence level will be much higher than what it is right now. On RPA, we have success stories, many, as well as failure stories. And the reason being that many a time now, because of the whole marketing side of RPA happening, everybody thinks that anything can be done. Anything which happens by an agent, yeah, we can do and automate. But that's not that simple. So one has to be very, very careful while, say, attempting any RPA assignment, focus on solutioning side of it. Does the solution fits in? It is not that each and everything will work on RPA, no. So the solution engineer, solution design, ability of your SME to explain the things in detail. He will say, I'm a non-techie, I don't know what RPA does, what your orchestrator does. But he has to have the ability to explain the things in a right way. Otherwise, midway, you will realize you have to redesign the whole thing. So we have seen many examples of that happening for all natural reasons that it is also new to the world. The skill sets are also running very, very tight on that. As I said, the best of the RPA, we are yet to see, and it will be surely mind-boggling.
Absolutely. Nanda, coming to you with the second point, you do a lot of work on the service delivery and automation. Going to Nanda. So service delivery automation, you have that a lot of work over there. But it's specifically, RPA is tied up, in my view, to a BPO world more than a KPO world. So in your experience on the knowledge processes, how have you handled the automation side so far? And what's your experience and recommendation there, Nanda?
So we've had some interesting experience. Thank you. So we've had some interesting experience here. Literally, I manage research and analytics, both being very, very knowledge centric. Always thought that RPA is for bots, where it's very rule based stuff, and this will not work for us. But we've really been able to do some automation and have some very interesting use cases, talk a few of those things. But before going into that, I will probably talk a little bit of hyper automation, the hype word that Gartner created, and seemed very theoretical at first, but really been able to understand it as we started experimenting with intelligent automation. Hyperautomation is automating stuff that traditionally requires human judgment or thinking. This includes designing, decision making, and all that stuff also. So it generally is not achieved by just one thing. You cannot use software to do it because there will be so many different combinations that you cannot create those rules to be able to do that. You cannot use RPA again because there are too many variations, too many exceptions there. So you will need an ecosystem to make it successful, and that ecosystem will be your IDP, intelligent processing of documents, because it's not just OCR where you extract information. It has to be AI ML driven, where you understand the context to be able to extract the right thing from the right place and layer it with automation. You could have bots that are attended or unattended bots as well. Over and above that, have some workflow engine, some IT solution with that, some NLP chatbots and all that. Together the solution emerges. So whatever we have done so far, mostly been homegrown solutions, and in all these cases it has been a lot of work where the SMEs have worked with the tech teams to be able to do it. I mean, if you do not have the SMEs fully into it, you can't get it done, because this requires a lot of thinking and designing. And some use cases have been like in investment banking. We work with bankers where bankers would just send out an email saying, I want this, and the analyst is supposed to go to multiple places, go to some websites, download stuff, go to different intranet repositories, or go to some subscription databases, bring all that information, put it in Excel, do some calculations, create some charts, put it on a PowerPoint and send it back to the banker along with a zip file with all the supporting documents. Now, we've been very proud that this is extremely judgment driven, and only brilliant people can do it, kind of a thing. But we've actually been able to automate this kind of stuff. It's not 100% automated, it is still human in the loop kind of a solution. So we have a NLP chatbot where the banker writes whatever he wants, and the chatbot goes back and puts it in a very structured form and says, is this what you want? This is the company on which you want. Is this ticker correct? Because you say GE, there could be so many different GEs that are listed. You need to figure out the right company. And then somebody will say, I want the latest information. What does latest mean? Annual report of 2021, or the share prices for the last 6 months, or whatever. So list out all the different things they want. And then if the bot can execute it, the bot executes. Otherwise, it goes to a human. But otherwise, the bot picks it up, brings all the information, downloads it from different places, puts it all into Excel, pastes it into a PowerPoint, formats it in the whatever the formatting requirements of the clients are, do it in that design, attach it to an email, take the zip file with all the other workings and all that, put it all, attach it and send it out. And this, as I said, is a solution which has multiple things working. You have NLP for the chatbot, you have AI ML embedded into it, and then you have the bots which actually just do the work of creating the files and putting them all together. So a solution like this is what we've done. Again, in the insurance space, we've done some other things, which is again risk modeling kind of stuff that requires a mix of everything. So that's been our experience.
Excellent. Some part of that research really sounded like a use case that I presented, so very close to it. All right. I think you bring in a very important point, Nada. I mean, the point of automation is great, but what about the people that essentially, we're trying to help the people, of course, the organization, and help the people as well. DP, I'll come to you with your experience on sourcing and procurement. How do you take care of the people, suppliers, and their skilling?
Yeah, I think the primary factor which will make your organization successful, being a BPM organization primarily, is how much digitally wired your team is. And we as leaders, how much we have been able to enthuse our teams to become digitally minded. Now, there is a huge gap there, I feel. We at the corner offices are thinking that, yes, we'll bring in that tool, this tool, we'll bring in people who will make this work, but I think that we have to have a way and a means to train our teams to be digitally enabled. You cannot always have a third party come over to you and do the work for you. If you want to be successful, you have to make your team, educated enough, digitally educated enough to make that happen. And how do you do that? You have to have now when you go to any customer or anywhere for a service provider versus what you are doing is how many digital employees you have. That's a new index coming in. Now, the real man on the floor is actually competing against a digital worker. Now, are you equipping the digital worker, the real man on the floor, to be tenable, to be employable, and give you that particular knowledge to execute? We are talking about SMEs all the time. It's coming over and over again. Ritupan talked about it. Gokul talked about it. Now, how are you going to keep those SMEs knowledgeable enough? And we can't say that particular SME will not have any knowledge about digital. It will not work. We will have to, all of us here in this room can make it happen to bring out a culture in the organization that everybody makes themselves digitally enabled. And fiercely follow that as how much my team is enabled. In your KPIs it should be there, that how much of your team is digitally enabled. Then I think, as Ajay said, the success will be much faster, industry will see a turnaround, and the people on the ground will also feel that I am still employable. That's my view.
Excellent. I think that's a very good point, because keeping and retaining people and, of course, upskilling it, and that's the whole premise in which RPA really started. Venkat, coming to you with your ITS experience and your experience on the future skills with the NASSCOM program, how does one do this at scale? How should one do this at scale? What's the idea there?
So the one good thing, am I audible? Okay, is good now? Yeah. So one good part is, I think the industry or the industry leaders sort of identified this, that it has to be done at scale. Right? That's how the Future Skills initiative, while I was with NASSCOM earlier, that's how it started. Right? And it wasn't an easy one to do, because when you have, for example, if you want to run an initiative within an organization, you run up other challenges. If you want to do it across the industry, there are a lot of questions that comes up. Who are you to do that? Do you know about pain points? Each of our pain points is different and all of that. So what was actually done is to really get all these industry leaders together to really brainstorm and see what is really required, right? And I think Rituparna actually mentioned that earlier, and I think DB also mentioned that rightly. So one is the technical skill part, right? Not necessarily that everybody has to be digitally skilled. In today's world, if you look at it, all of us are consumers of technology, be it AI, cloud, knowingly or unknowingly we're consuming it. But the thing is, when you're aware of that, you are well educated to really appreciate that and leverage it in the right situation. So the whole thing was about how do you build a digital mindset? And that's easier said than done, right? And usually what happens is at the leadership level, yes, they understand that, but does it roll down to the bottom, as DB mentioned? That's the most significant thing. So what was done as part of the Future Skills initiative as well is to really, if you look at the BPM industry, the major problem that still exists today, or it's probably amplified in the last 2 years, is also on the attrition and the lack of availability of skilled resources. So what they did is we actually got a lot of these BPM companies together. I'm sure most of them who are on the dais here also, they had contributed to really put together what is those skills that are required for an employee to be productive, right? So, and gone are the days where it is only about a particular skill. You could say, I'm a technical expert, I'm a domain expert, or I'm a professional skills expert, right? Now, the actual success comes in when you have the blend of all this together, right? So, as they said, if you talk about an RPA or AI/ML, just a technology guy alone cannot do anything. Neither can an SME alone do anything. So, the key thing is a collaboration. So, if you look at future skills as well, the idea was not just about those 10 technologies that we identified, because the government was insisting, saying that, okay, this is what we need to drive, because they want to really position India as a digital talent hub. But then we realized, and most of the industry leaders said this, the professional skills or the soft skills is equally or more important, because I'm sure everybody realizes that it's really hard for somebody to train them on those areas. Rather, in today's world, collaboration is key. You look at organizations with all the M&As that are happening, you look at whatever we heard earlier, be it Botminds and the other as well. It's more about, are you leveraging the technology, are you collaborating? It's not about whether I can do it. Yes, probably I can build that, but the time to market is important. So the collaboration is the key. I think those are the things which are very important from a skilling perspective. And the good part is a lot of organizations have started that. When I was with NASSCOM as well, I did work with most of these large organizations. They rolled out a program about digital literacy or digital skilling, right, across the organization, and they had incentivized as well. So the key is to really come top down. So otherwise, it's not going to work. Top down, and as I think DB put a very good point about having it as part of the KRA is something which is very essential. Otherwise, we're setting up for failure.
Absolutely. I think automation, in my experience in last, half a decade or more, it kind of has to be top down unless it is, small silo. That's what you want, because automation has a basic fear of, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to go ahead and, eradicate some part of that. But if you look at top down and we look at all these skilling pieces, I think that's the key point there. Now, Gopal, I'm coming to you with the question now. With your experience in ITS, I think you have a unique perspective of, working on a captive part as well. But let's not forget that this is all about end customer. We are doing this automation training all about the end customer. How do we ensure customer success? How do we ensure customer delight at the end there?
Not sure. Can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. So, brilliantly covered. Thank you, fellow panelists. I think we spoke about digital transformation, intelligent automation. I'm going to take a step back because currently I head a customer service team for a global crypto exchange, and pretty much my customers are actually on a smartphone, right, or a web, which on the digital side. But I'll take a step back, go to the previous organization that I worked, which is Agritech. One of the eye-opener incident was that that's when I realized that only 50% of Indians are on the smartphone, right? So while we keep driving digital automation, I realized that 50% of the customers were not even on the digital side. They were not even using smartphone. They were using feature phones. So further deep down, I realized that the customer base was pretty diverse. On one side, I had like a vegetable seller, who would sell vegetables on the push cart. On the other side, I had the biggest e-commerce giant, as a customer. So I realized that, okay, now it's 50%, back then it was 39%. So none of these farmers or none of these customers who were on the other side, who were not on the digital side, couldn't get any much of benefit from offers or anything like that, right? So perfectly, I think, the team infused digital opportunity perfectly by doing a good amount of learning from customer and farmer behavior. A simple example is a push cart guy would, again, the data says are a bunch of people who will actually kind of, generally try to make their orders, buy their products during their lunch time, right? So we try to start tracking, we try to, track the behavior of these customers, right? We understood that this is the time they were calling us. So instead of customers calling us, we actually used the digital platform, identified their required time, we customized the outbound call, inbound call to outbound call system where they were getting calls from us, right? So they were no more left out from all these digital offers and opportunities, right? And then they always, I also realized that not even customer satisfaction service were generating to them because system as such was derived for emails or messages, and they were not educated to go ahead and give a service. So we started using a proper good IVR solutions, a voice over bots, right, to hear problems of them and then go back and actually try to resolve it, right? So this is one of the amazing learning that I had from Agritech. The reason I wanted to call out in this forum is because when we try to break the problems digitally, sometimes we miss out on those customers who might not have got opportunity to kind of use, right? Because most of the times we spend a lot of time to educate our associates, our team, make them SMEs, make them digitally literate, right? But we often miss out on making sure that our end-to-end customers have the same opportunity to do it, right? So one step from there, right? Once I realized that, okay, it's a diverse population, I broke the customers, made sure that, the service that we were providing were, customized, to these two set of customers. I realized that, the more and more, when we keep automating things, the easier version of the contacts or the easier version of the problems gets into the automation first, right? What will happen to the workforce who is sitting and listening to the customers, right? They start getting tougher and tougher calls, right? So, that's when, the upskilling and reskilling element comes. And upskilling and reskilling element is something that we should constantly keep it on, is because while digital automation and intelligence in digital area is improving, we also need to build as much as patience in the workforce who are physically doing things, right? Because I have been, in organizations where, when I was in the BPO and the BPM sides, right? My clients have forced me to keep the CSAT metric at 85%, even though automation was happening parallelly, right? But I think when I came to the other side, captive center, I think that was one of the first problems that I solved, is because I realized that when you're doing automations and trying to unplug all those sweet calls, 85% of customer satisfaction cannot be the drive for us, right? Instead, you break your satisfaction in two metric, right? Whatever automations, whatever digitally you drive a customer satisfaction separately for it. And manpower that you actually use, the workforce that you use, you measure their CSAT in a different way, because they're just getting the most troublesome contacts or, the customer calling them, right? So largely, just to summarize, I think, look at your customer, identify your customer, make sure that digital platform that is provided is, end-to-end for all types of customers. And from the BPO, BPM side, which, I think I worked over a decade, is, look back, go back to your client. It's okay to, put that right intent in front of them and tell them that, hey, customers don't call for booking confirmation anymore, right? So customers call for a genuine problem, then, you gauge that problem and support and motivate the front-end associates so that they also believe in them and do. All right. Thank
Absolutely. Thank you. I think two takeaways that I have from here is that not all customers are same. You have different requirements, and not everybody can solve everything with a single technology. You need to look at it slightly differently. I think Rituparam talked about earlier in terms of skilling and being able to go ahead and pick up the right kind of people, skill them up, and that's a skill part. If the lower things that we were, smaller challenges that we were addressing earlier, for which we actually set up the contact center and then we automated that, of course, clearly difficult calls will come through there. Ashish, coming to you with the question, and before I go to Ashish, there will be time for questions. So if you have any questions for the panel, please feel free to, form that up and I'll ask up. Ashish, you've been running you have automation experience. You're setting up a COE experience as well. Do you want to share some best practices in terms of how to set it up, how to go about it?
So what's happening out there is that you were talking about at scale, right? And BPOs and the COEs, or automation COEs within BPOs, are really the ones who will drive the change at scale. One of the things, obviously, with BPOs is, and everybody knows this, everybody's an expert, is that the business model of BPOs or BPMs itself has changed. Earlier on, the model was the more people that you had, the more revenues you have. Now, it's no longer directly proportional to it. In fact, might get even inversely proportional, but we're not there yet. So that's one point. The other point is, as Nanda was mentioning, we need to look at the entire hyper-automation suite itself, because it needs to be end-to-end, right from the extraction of the data to the process mining itself, to the RPA bots that really work. It really needs to give an intelligent output. The third part really would be associated with the expectations or the ROI. And this is where the real pitfall of automation, and especially with BPMs, really lies, and the end clients of the BPMs really lie, is the fact that people expect, and as was being mentioned by Ajay as well, is that if you put a particular automation process in place of the human, it is not a one-to-one replacement, at least not at this point of time. What most BPMs and the COEs within them forget is that there is a process re-engineering that is required in order to introduce automation within their processes itself. Let's take an insurance claims process or something like that. In a US claims process, the claim could have as much as 32 documents in a docket that come in. Earlier on, it was one person who was handling this. Now it is 4 systems who are doing it. There are structured documents, there are unstructured documents. There is an underlying layer of intelligence required. For example, does the driver license, is it the same Ashish who is on the driver's license, who has raised the request for the claim, is the same person who went to the hospital in the ambulance bill is there, is the same person making the medical claim as well. So that intelligence needs to float across, and this obviously goes back to the question I had asked you earlier around KYC, etc. Right, so those are the pitfalls where the COEs need to re-engineer that particular process in which the claims management is really done. And they forget to have these conversations with their end clients. They just tell them that, yes, we are automating the process, but they fail to get into a discussion with their end clients, telling them that we've been doing it this way for the last 15 years or so for y'all. But now that we're introducing this particular thing, we'll just not improve the turnaround time, we'll just not improve the number of claims that we settle in a given period of time. That requires a cooperation with the end client. Right, there are the large end clients, the usual suspect insurers in the US, who are willing to engage with the BPMs, but in the drive to get greater margins, to drive faster turnaround times, these discussions are forgotten. So it's just not about introducing an automation tool or a platform, it's about process re-engineering.
I think that's a very important point. That's my last question that I'm coming at. The re-engineering part essentially is what you rightly mentioned, a lot of people forget. It's just that I've got these 10 people, that's a process that you automate. And typically, that's where historically an RPA automation or an automation per se always overshoots the desired timeline. So you expect it about 6 months, then it takes about a year and a half, and you're still at about 2-4%, I think. Uday had covered that part earlier in terms of what the automation is coming through. So what are the typical RPA mistakes or mistakes that are made typically in an RPA implementation? You could do it both from an implementation perspective, people perspective. Ashish covered that from a re-engineering perspective, whichever angle that you can describe best.
So many, actually, I can write a book on that, frankly. And each one of us would have also gone through that experience of, see, it is like saying, how do you decide which tool to use, right? It's like saying which car to buy, which will not have an accident. It depends on the driver to a large extent. Of course, the engineering, the machines and all those are there, but mostly the human factor of who is driving it. Same applies to this technology also. Who is driving Are they aware of what it is, or they have heard something in a seminar and next day they go back to office and say, I need RPA here, 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 start it. But then you don't know which vendor to select, how good is the vendor team, because the vendors are also frankly struggling for good skill sets to be available, and we have seen that happening with frankly any brand per se. So what we have also started, before I come to mistakes, we learned from some human skilling thing. What we did 1.5 years before, we started some initiative where we encourage each and every employee to make their own bots, whatever way they can, for their limited area of work. So suppose there is a team leader who wants to do something, we'll allocate him some licenses to work on. We will make sure some SMEs of the project or the technical skills are available at one station who can address anything across the globe, who will take your weekend classes on that, and you make what you believe you want to make. Say you want to make my emails, if I am not there, should get replied, and 20% of the emails are such with yes, no type of a situation, or where you know a certain transaction has to be done. So a team leader is now dreaming, how does it helps me to reduce my manual workload? We encourage that. Once in 6 months, we have competitions where these team leaders are encouraged to showcase what they have done, and then a lot of money flows in terms of rewards, motivation, and all that happens. So that has yielded very good results, because now we have a situation where the SME himself is working to his hands on a solution. It may succeed, it may not succeed, is frankly not the worry. The worry is that digital mindset will start appearing in their workforce. The other mistakes that happens is one size fits all. And we have seen several examples that, oh, this can happen, this agent does this, everything is logical, let's get into it. So many a time, big picture is missing. At a high level, we know we should do this. Then comes the another factor of how much headcount we reduced. Frankly, I would believe at this stage, organization should not look into that aspect, because there is so much of work in the organizations to do. Shifting of the employees is very easy now. So if you start saying that we will work saying 30% reduction if we do this, I think that should not be the goal. Goal should be the efficiencies that you will be able to make out, the SLAs which you will be reducing, and the improvement in the customer satisfaction that you will achieve. Those should be the goals. RPA is just one tool, one technology. In times it will have different faces, different shapes. We have to be adaptable to it, frankly.
I think fantastic point there. Just to chime in, I think instead of looking at the overall reduction in headcount, we should look at how much are we able to augment a particular person's work. So if you can augment 20, 30, 40% of that by keeping the same headcount, then you get the ideas, then you get more things, moving through from there. All right, do we have any questions in the audience for the panel here? Yes, please.
I personally believe that efficiency of FT is only a piece of it, right? I personally advocate it is more to do with the market scalability. It's a classical question in 6th standard, right? 20 साड़ियाँ 1 घंटे में सूखती हैं, 2000 साड़ियाँ कितने घंटे में सूखेगी? So we need to sell this idea, number one. Number two, as a R2R person, as a record to report person, I always believe that controls can be done by machines. Whatever you put, how many human eyes you want to put, you put maker, checker, reviewer, approver, how many people, you are prone to error. So these two factors have much more importance than only the FT saving, I will say.
I think that's a good point. Does anybody want to comment on that? The point really was that, do you want to repeat your point? Shall I rephrase for you? Yeah. I think the whole idea really is that, the scalability part that essentially comes about. I think I'll let you answer that, because I had the answer in mind. I forgot the question. Sorry.
No, I was saying that it's all about, not about only the FT efficiency, and as a third party outsourcer, always client tell me that you want to do just because you want to reduce FT. I said no. I want to tell them that if you are going by CAGR of 30% in future, I'm not going to ask you the more person to do it, right? That is, scalability is the one. Second, which is the most foremost thing in R2R, especially like controllership accounts, controllership area, You can have 4 reviewers, you can have approver, checker, whatever you have, but nothing can beat the control set up by the automations. So that's why I say these two factors are much more prominent than FTE savings, what people generally tend to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, fully agree. I remember my initial, whenever we started doing automation, client will say, if you are doing this, how much reduction of the revenues or billing will happen to me? Then we have to convince them, no, we are doing this, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. So there's a lot of selling involved, and I'm talking 9 years old situation. Nowadays, things have matured. The outsourcers also understand that it is a necessity, you can't live without it. And now actually the vendors or the business side also understands that no point in squeezing the vendor to an extent where they bleed and are unable to digitize themselves. So I think that maturity has 100% improved in last few years on both sides.
Just to add to it, most contracts nowadays are being written with the base understanding that there will be an X level of automation in the base itself.
The whole manpower lift and shift and all that is history for this outsourcing industry now, frankly.
Yeah, the only other point which I want to add is similar to what we do for cloud. For example, if you want to move an app to cloud, there is a due diligence done. I think that is also important in the automation space. What I've seen from my personal experience, most often it's not done. You believe that if a certain process can be automated, it should be automated. But my response to them is not everything that can be automated need to be automated, right? So I think that's an important thing. The due diligence, if it's done properly, I think it would set the right expectations. And most often, as you said, more than the clients, I think if the internal stakeholders also, the expectations are very high. You believe, okay, if that's a kink, okay, it has to be an immediate thing on the FT reduction.
I think one transformation will happen if we are doing cloud for our data. Why not a cloud for BPM services? And I think that can be possible only through automation. One guy being a SME in finance, you change a bit of settings and he becomes an SME in sourcing and procurement. The same guy becomes an SME in customer service. And I think that would be the ideal world when the customer can use BPM as a service. And I think that is why we all here need to move towards automation and make the team, applicable towards that, I think.
Fantastic. Awesome. Any more questions here? Yeah.
Historically, we have always thought of, SMEs and automation as two separate teams. Gradually, that's getting blended. Okay, that's very important. And how do you see that changing? Because RPA or AI, ML, most of it, the preliminary stuff is very easy, if you ask me. Anybody can learn it. Our education system might not be designed that way now, that you do a commerce course or a healthcare course, you don't learn RPA. But over a period of time, it's goes, how do you see that getting blended? I mean, the very high-tech part stays with the hardcore developer team, but the basics, RPA, you don't need to learn coding about it. It's almost like learning Excel. Today, as an accountant, you know Excel. As a doctor, you know Excel. You're the marketing guy, you know Excel. RPA will be there. So how are we seeing the industry, the training or education system helping the SMEs to become experts on that? Not experts, but to a great extent, learning that.
And the whole need about the digital mindset, I think that's predominantly what you're talking about as an SME level, right? They need to have the know-how about the technology. They need not be experts on that, but the art of possibility should be known to them. Because what happens is a tech guy will not understand the business, right? So from a domain perspective, he doesn't have the understanding. So if a problem is brought to a technologist, he can solve it. But the problem is not known to the technologist, right? So the SME is the one who understands that problem. But if he understands the technology, then he'll be able to understand, okay, this is where automation can help. This is where an NLP can help. They need not find a solution, but the possibility has to be known. I think this is one important aspect why the digital mindset and the awareness has to be built in. And this we started out because most often what happens is earlier days client used to come and ask, saying that, okay, this is something that we need to automate it. But that's also a threat. If you're not acting ahead of time, your competition can actually come and take away. So that's where it is important that these people, and most of the organizations have started that, right, from a digital skilling perspective. They want to make sure at a manager level, especially the ones who are interacting with the clients, they really understand the basics of the AI, RPA, and all of that. And even this technology, there is a lot of collaboration. It's not any siloed anymore. Like we talked about RPA. Now the value is not just using RPA, but a combination of RPA, AI, ML all together. So collaboration is at all levels.
Also, there are a lot of these low-code, no-code kind of platforms now, like you saw the Botminds demo. Now, these kind of platforms are what we should allow people to play on, work on, and, understand the potential and see that, then people automatically, when they start fiddling with things like he said, you allow people to fiddle with things, give them those licenses, give them that opportunity, and reward them for doing that. And that's where the mindset changes, that you don't need to be very, very techie to be doing these things, but basically you need to be aware of what opportunities are there, what could be done, and as long as you know your domain, you will find some solutions if you're fiddling with a lot of different things. And it's not about always being successful, it's about trying.
Just another aspect to that is, it also goes back to the previous question that was being asked, is it helps the BPMs move up the value chain. That's what I would understand, is that just from doing a particular process, they can actually become more domain-centric, have more domain knowledge, and that really helps them move up the value chain instead of just understanding that A field and B field and C field should be the same. They should really understand the process behind that request itself and perhaps move up the value chain in that domain itself.
In industrial world, there used to be one term called job rotation. In ITS world, frankly, that has not yet picked up high-speed pace the way it should be, ideally, because the moment 2000 outsourcing businesses started coming, everybody started delivering, and you have a specialized job, this. But now I know for sure organizations have started an ops guy saying, I'm not getting good manpower. Okay, move him into HR for a few months, let him see the hiring market, let him see outside condition. Somebody says technology is not, say, offering me the best. Move him into IT section, he will understand the boundary conditions. And last, move him into finance, he will understand how money comes and goes. So he will have a perspective of the thing, and I'm sure it will improve, it will increase, and you will have hybrid guys. I would say to your question, with the time, 20% of the promotions will happen for those SMEs who have a inclination towards all of this automation side of it. I can see that happening. While a hardcore techie will never, say, be out of his zone. A hardcore SME will never be interested in, say, IT side of the world, because it is not their aptitude, and we have to respect that. But going forward, of course, somebody is like an all-rounder, bat ball, SME as well as automation. Obviously, in the industry, there will be the guys who will rise.
Just wanted to add, I think if you just look at a training, right, you were actually talking about skilling, right? If you just look at the way we train, right, I think the current population is not interested in sitting in the class and listening to the training, right? If you just add some mock sessions, gamification. Simplest example is, I don't think Facebook and Instagram is taught to anybody, right? If you actually look at it, sometimes, I wonder, my 10-year-old niece, is I think much ahead on Facebook and Instagram when compared to me, right? So I think from a skilling element, even though I agree your point that, there is no particular course like Excel or something, right? But I think as an organization, if we take skilling as an opportunity, add gamification to it, add a lot of mocks, right? So that they do keep doing that, and add an assessment and certification through that instead of, just doing a typical way of assessment and doing it, right? So you predominantly get a product ready workforce, and on the other side, automation will continue.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the questions. And panel, thank you very much for your participation. Great to have you here. Most of us are available. If there are certain questions again, the panel will be available around. Back to you, John.
Thank you so much, Vikas. You've moderated the session really beautifully. Thank you to all our panel speakers. I would request Mr. Amit Vohra to present the mementos to all our panelists. Could we please have a huge round of applause to all of our speakers?
Remove those bottles and stools, fatafat na. At least that much for photographs. Right now.
Can we please clap for them? Nanda Chintaluri. Debaprasad Chakrabarti. Nandagopal V. Mr. Venkatraman Umakant. Nandagopal V. Ashish Bhatia.
Especially requested